Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've had the chance to enjoy some fellowship and enjoy some friendship and catch up with a few of the folks that you may not have seen in a while, and I hope you've had a chance to enjoy your meal. I want to welcome you back to the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Some of you know it as Pan American College. Some of you know it as Pan American University. Some of you know it as UTPA. A couple of us may remember it as Harvard on the Rio Grande, maybe even Taco Tech. We've made a little progress since then, and we're glad that you're back. My name is Tony Fortina. I get the pleasure of serving as your Master of Ceremonies for today's event. I've been involved with the athletic program since I was a freshman on campus here in the fall of 1990. I started as their public address announcer and have worked my way through a couple of ADs, a couple of head coaches, and still find myself here. And I really love this place because for me, UTRGV is home. So I'd like to welcome you all back home. How many of you are out-of-towners and this is your first trip here to UTRGV? Just by a round of applause, let us know. Okay. How many of our alumni left UTPA, Pan American University, and haven't come back? Let me hear you by a round of applause. And how many of you, this is your absolute first time here in Edinburgh on campus? By a round of applause, please. I'd like to ask you to, once we're done with our ceremony, take a tour on your own, explore. A couple of years back, the state of Texas came in and put $400 million into this program. $400 million into the University of Texas Pan American and the University of Texas Brownsville. And that's when it became UTRGV. We are one of the fastest growing universities in the entire country. What will happen here over the next few years is going to determine what will happen across our country in the next few years. So this is your opportunity to get in on the ground floor. And we're glad that you're here. And I'm going to get off my soapbox because I got a script to follow, and we're going to get to work. But there will be a lot of reminiscing. And now is the time to place your wager on which one of our Hall of Fame inductees will cause the most tears, and at what time. I already have the baseball guys because they're the most chillones. All right, speaking of crying baseball guy, I need to introduce you to the man of the Hall of Fame committee. Join me in welcoming the chair of our Athletics Hall of Fame committee, a former baseball player himself. He was inducted as an individual in 2017, and then again as part of the 1975 baseball team in 2018. His 1975 jersey, you saw it last night because he wore it to the game. That Jack Ewing still fits in that uniform. And today he's going to give you the official welcome. So please welcome Mr. Jack Ewing.
great to be here today. And I want to thank all of y'all for coming, and I want to welcome you, and especially our special guests tonight, our inductees, I say today. Our inductees, which you'll get to know them real well in just over the next hour or so. And of course, I want to welcome and recognize Dr. Bailey and Chase Conk, our athletic director. I can't tell you how much they have done for this university, and especially the athletic program over these last few years. And their commitment, their dedication is unparalleled. I really want to thank y'all for what you've done. It's been wonderful. And I also want to recognize our committee. Our committee for the Hall of Fame is sitting somewhere back here. We have a few of them, and not everyone is here. I see Kiki and Lalo and Jim Board, who's going to be inducted. He's on the Hall of Fame committee as well. Who else do I have here? Barbara's here. Barbara's going to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. She's on the committee as well. Monica Swift is on the committee. She's not here. Jim Lancaster is not here. And who else am I missing? Somebody else? Jim Board, we recognize. So anyway, but anyway, we want to thank our committee who diligently looks over the applicants for the inductees, and of course it goes out for a vote and so forth. But I really want to thank for their dedication and their hard work as part of the committee. And again, we want to welcome everybody here. You know, I am a baseball player. I'm going to start crying already. Because I can tell you, I stood up here, I guess 4 or 5 years ago, when I was inducted, and I can't tell you what it means to stand up here. And I could stand in these guys, y'all's steps, which you're going to be speaking on. It's such a wonderful experience. I'm reliving it right now. But you know, it's just part of the process. You go through, you play ball, and do all the things you do, and then you leave the campus, and you're kind of a nobody. You've been somebody for all these years, and all of a sudden you're a nobody. And you go out and you look around, and nobody's polishing your shoes for you, no one's washing your clothes and ironing your uniform and preparing meals for you. You got to do all that for yourself. And so when you're inducted, it's a real validation to what you did. And that was 1975 and 76 when I played. So it still rings true after all these years. So I want to thank y'all for putting me up here and able to do this. And it's an honor to serve this university. And talking about this university, you know, we've gone through a lot of diversity in the university. As a Bronc, you know, there were some transition issues going to becoming the Vaqueros. It took some of us a while to climb on board to the program, and some haven't climbed on board yet, but that's their loss, as long as they hold back. And because the university is a great place to be. This university, UTRGV, it's just phenomenal. It's great. The people that we get to work with and share the dreams and see the progress. I tell you what, around this campus right now, if you miss 30 days of keeping up with what's happening, you've missed a lot. And Chase may be sharing this in a few minutes, I'm not sure about, but the expanded programs that are going to be happening here over the next 3 or 4 years, it's phenomenal. So just hang on to your hats when he shares this with you, if he is, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's a wonderful place to be. And, you know, I was kind of like, you know, in the Bible, when Jesus was teaching about the wineskins, wineskins, I was an old wineskin. Because I couldn't accept the new wine. I couldn't accept the new UTRGV. I couldn't accept being a vaquero. And you know, when you're an old wineskin and you put new wine in, it's just going to bust. And so, you know, I had to climb on board and put on the new wineskin, and I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad to be a part of this program and the great people that we meet. And anyway, I can't say enough. And guys, if you have not supported UTRGV, you must. It's part of our valley. It's going to be woven all through from Laredo to Rio Grande City or wherever, and a little bit north of us. And it'll be infiltrating the whole state of Texas. This will be a destination university for people to come to. Climb on board, be a part of it. You won't regret it. Put on the new wineskin, guys. The old wineskin's gone. You know, the history's great. This is wonderful. Don't ever throw it in the ditch at all. But we got to embrace the new. And the new's here, and it's upon us, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. Chase, you want to come forward?
Jack, you are certainly not a nobody. And we appreciate you, my friend, and appreciate those kind words. And I think that's well said. Like Jack mentioned, I have the privilege to serve as the Vice President, Director of Athletics here at the university. And this is truly an incredible weekend, really an incredible week, excuse me, for our athletics program, our department, our university. 2 years in the making. 2 years in the making. This Hall of Fame class that we're inducting today has had to wait 2 years. I will say this, Jim Board has soaked up every day of these 2 years since we had to delay this event last year. So he is soaked up being a part of this Hall of Fame class, as is everybody. But Jim, appreciate you being here in the Valley and always being a part, you and Barbara, everything that y'all do for us locally. And of course, it's wonderful having our other Hall of Famers back here this morning. A couple people I would like to recognize. One obviously is the president, and I'll introduce him later, but Dr. Guy Bailey, he truly helps makes us go. So Dr. Bailey, I appreciate you being here this morning. We have a couple of our head coaches with us, and this is a busy time of the year for us. A lot of our programs are competing, whether it be at home or on the road, but we do have a couple of head coaches with us. If you guys would stand, we have head coach Matt Figger with men's basketball. Thanks for being here, coach. And then we have first-year head coach as well, Nathan Robinson, head men's tennis coach. And of course, I want to extend my sincere appreciation to our Hall of Fame committee. Again, 2 years in the making, and what a turnout we have here, and what a beautiful day here in the Rio Grande Valley. Today is for all of you. Today is for our past inductees. Today is for our former lettermen. Today is for those being inducted today. And it's really, and I can speak to this personally, one of my most favorite weekends of the year. It's truly a placeholder for us to be able to reflect and to celebrate the rich traditions and history of this athletics program. And so we truly want to welcome everybody back, family and friends, as we celebrate in front of a really big crowd here this morning. Jack mentioned it earlier, and I think he put it well, and I'll say this. We will never forget about old wineskin. The traditions and the history of this department, and I hope our Hall of Famers that are here today, I hope our 1971 baseball team and their 50th reunion from being in the College World Series in '71, I hope at every turn this weekend you all feel the admiration, the appreciation, and the love, because the history of this department is rich. And if it wasn't for that history, we would not be where we are today. We stand on such a very strong foundation, and it's because of what you all have done to put us in this position as a university, as a program. But when you see our student athletes, they know that there's people that came before them, and they know the foundation that you all laid. But we are in the midst of transformational times. It's an exciting time to be in the Rio Grande Valley. How much has it grown for those of you that are coming back after a number of years? Unbelievable, huh? I hear the stories of when you would leave McAllen, and Pan Am and this campus was way north, right? And the orchard fields between the two cities. Now you don't know when you're leaving one and heading into the next. And we're just getting started, right? The university is a part of that, and we have a tremendous region and tremendous community. But here at the university, there's some really exciting things happening. And what we're most grateful of in athletics is that we're part of the vision that Dr. Bailey has for our university. We're about to bring Division I college football to the Rio Grande Valley. How amazing is that? And we still have to get the UT System Board of Regents approval, and that'll hopefully happen here in the next few months. But our students spoke. We had a referendum this past fall, and 61% of those students that voted in support of starting football here in the Rio Grande Valley. We're going to start women's swimming and diving. That'll take us now to 18 sports in our athletics program. But it's just a part of it. What we're doing from a campus standpoint and really transforming and reimagining the experience for our students across the Rio Grande Valley. And to Jack's point, I think we have an unbelievable opportunity, not just to transform our region here, but really to make a statement in the state of Texas and really make a statement throughout the country. And we want you to be a part of that, and we want you to feel part of the fabric of everything that we've done, obviously, and where we're going as an institution. This class today boasts some incredible accolades, whether it be our team or our individuals being inducted. It's a tremendous group of honorees that we'll get to recognize as we go through our program. But I can tell you this, with our current student athletes today, very, very proud of them. Right now, our student athletes are carrying a 3.29 grade point average. How about that? Our coaches are recruiting great young people. They're representing you well. They're doing the right things in the classroom, obviously, in the community. And our mantra with our young people is we want to graduate champions. We want to graduate champions. And oftentimes I have a chance to visit with them, and usually at the beginning of the year or as we're saying goodbye to our seniors, I'll share this with our student athletes. You know, their time as a young person here on our campus, those are transformational times for their lives. But I often tell them that the banners over the years, those things are going to fade, right? Those championship trophies, those championship rings, those things will tarnish. But it's the relationships that they build while they're a student athlete here at our university. Those are the things that last a lifetime. And today is a reminder of that. You all are living proof of that. And we've gotten to experience on our side, watching the reunions and people seeing each other again for the first time in years, reconnecting like they just saw each other 2 weeks ago. That's truly what's special. And this is such a reminder of the beauty of college athletics in our country. Today is what it's all about. And so I appreciate you being a part of our history, being here today and enjoying the festivities this weekend. We have so much planned, but this is truly why we do what we do, and we're so happy to share it with you. I now want to bring up our president, but before I do that, I'll say a couple more words about Dr. Bailey. He is a tremendous, not just leader, but as an athletic director, I couldn't work for a better president than Dr. Guy Bailey. He understands intercollegiate athletics. He's seen it on multiple levels, and I talked about that vision. That's his vision. His vision for this institution truly is to transform and recreate what we want to be in the next 5, 10, 30, 40, 50 years. And we're so fortunate to have a president that values intercollegiate athletics and puts us as part of that front porch that represents this university. We're north of 32,000 students now. Unbelievable, north of 32,000 students. We're going to graduate our 3rd class with the School of Medicine this spring. And so the changes and the things that are happening, they're big for us, but they're big for the state of Texas, and they're big for our country. And when we say we feel that we're the future of Texas, we really believe that, and it's because of the visionary leadership of Dr. Bailey. So please help me welcome to the podium our president, Dr. Guy Bailey.
Thank you so much. I want to welcome all of you here. How many of you went to school here when it was Pan American College? Pan American University, right? University of Texas Pan American? Yeah. So quite a number of people have gone here at different stages. What that, to me, suggests is this is a university with a dynamic history and a dynamic future. Think about that. People remind me that this university started in buildings across the street that belonged to the school district. Anybody go to classes in those buildings? Yeah. Does the campus look different now? It does, doesn't it? This is a dynamic place and a great place to be. Someone asked me once, well, you don't really have any connection to that past yet. Actually, I do. I came to the Valley as a widow in 2014, remarried in 2020 to a woman whose mother was on the Board of Regents of Pan American University. So I've heard all about that history, know all about the history of Pan American University, Pan American College, University of Texas, Pan American, University of Texas, Brownsville. We embrace all of that. All of that is our legacy. It's our past. We're very proud of it. We wouldn't be here we wouldn't have the future we have without that past. And what I really like about Chase is when he came in here, he understood you embrace the past and you embrace the future. We had a wonderful past. We're going to build on that and have a terrific future. And we've been very, very fortunate since I've been here. I came here when the institute, and really before the institution opened up in 2014. And what I saw here was a possibility that was unique in American higher education in the 21st century. You don't start new universities anymore. Think about it. When's the last time you can think of something new being created in American higher education? You can't. It just doesn't happen. You don't start new medical schools very often. Those are unique, once in a lifetime things. And so, because we had strong foundations to build on, we're able to do some things that nobody else in the United States can do. We've tried to do a couple things here at UTRGV, and I want to make sure that you're all aware of these. You just give me a minute or two to do a little bragging, but also to tell you about some things that are happening. When I got here, one of the biggest concerns I had was the debt that students take on. And you probably read about it, heard about it, and use it as true right now. If you graduate from college with $50,000, $60,000 in debt, well, what do? If you go into graduate school or medical school, you have $100,000 in debt. So I decided we were not going to do that. We were going to address all of those issues right up front. And so if you look at rankings right now, we're either first or second, depending on which year. The City University of New York is the other institution we compete with there. Our students graduate with the lowest debt of any four-year university in the United States. We're absolutely committed to that. Forbes magazine has ranked us number 8 in the United States as a Best Buy in higher education. Now, if you get a chance to look at those rankings, well, thank you. The other universities up there are Harvard and Stanford and Princeton. No other Texas school is there, but Harvard and Stanford and Princeton are there, and we're there in that ranking. And that's a commitment of all of our faculty, our staff, everybody in the institution for doing the best for our students. The other thing we decided to take on this last year, we've done a great job of helping undergraduates graduate with as little debt as possible. On the other hand, if you go to medical school, what are you going to do? You got 4 years of medical school, you're going to borrow $20,000 a year, you're going to end up with $100,000 in debt. So we started thinking, how do we address this problem? There was another problem that I was thinking about as well. Parents come up to me all the time. Oh, but by the way, question for you. What's our biggest export from the Valley? Citrus? No. Cotton? No. People. Brain power. Yeah, our kids go to school somewhere else, or they go to professionals to get a medical degree somewhere else, and they stay there, right? I can't tell you how many kids I meet in Dallas, in Houston, Austin. Hey, they're Valley kids. We want them down here. We want to keep them down here. And so thinking about those two things, how do we help kids get through professional school, graduate school, and not have any debt, and how do we stay here? We came up with a solution, and we have a new scholarship program that will be put in place beginning this fall. And what we're doing, we're looking for the best high school students in the Rio Grande Valley. And let's say that you're a high school student, you want to go to medical school. We have a program where we can pre-admit you to medical school, okay? As you graduate from high school. You have to meet all these benchmarks, but when you graduate, you're guaranteed admission to medical school. Then we'll also give you a full 4-year scholarship that will pay all your tuition, all your mandatory fees, and 2 years of housing free, right? Now you can get that in a lot of places, nothing. Here's the kicker. Let's say you meet all those benchmarks and you go into medical school, we'll also guarantee you 4-year scholarship to medical school no tuition, no fees. Masters in engineering, same thing. MBA, same thing. In other words, what we're doing is we're helping our students go all the way through to their professional degrees, no debt. You graduate debt-free. Hey, your first mortgage is not your education, it's your house, right? And that's what you want it to be. Now, it's not exactly free. Here's the thing we're asking each of those students. We want a commitment from you. We want a commitment from you. When you graduate, and when you get that medical degree, or you get that PA degree, we want you to guarantee that you'll stay in the Rio Grande Valley for the number of years we scholarshiped you after your bachelor's degree. So 4 years, School of Medicine, you give us 4 years in the Rio Grande Valley. Hey, if we can keep them here 4 years, we got it, right? You know that, you live here, you know what a wonderful place it is to live. And so what we're trying to do, our goal is not just to build a great university, but it's to help the Valley be everything it can be. This is our home, we live here. And so we're concerned with this institution and the Valley as a whole. Everything we do to try to put that in place. Now, one other concern we had was our campus life. I don't know how many of you lived on campus, how many of you lived at home, and so most of our students live at home. Students do better if they live on campus, or at least if they're far more engaged with what happens on campus, right? The more engaged you are as a student, the better your grades, the better your retention and graduation rates, okay? So we've worked very hard to think about how to create the best campus life possible. Think about what campus life revolves around in universities. It's athletics, right? Right, I mean, Chase is heading up the unit that will be the center of campus life here. And so our investments, and these are investments in athletics, investments in swimming and diving, investments in football, investments in the existing sports. Go into the stadium, baseball stadium today, and look at what's been done there. We've made a significant investment there. Or in the locker rooms, or where we play basketball. You'll see we've made, how much are we investing now in the next few years, Jay? $30 million in athletics. This is not counting football. Not counting football. This is our investment in athletics in the coming years. Why is this? We want our students engaged with it. We want them going to games. We want them here on campus. We want them want this to be a central part of their life. And so what's happening in athletics is absolutely at the center of where we're going as an institution. We want our students engaged on campus. We want them to graduate with very little debt, right? No debt if possible. And we want them to stay in the Rio Grande Valley. Think about that. Think about what a great place we can create working together. And that's what this is all about. We wouldn't be doing this, we wouldn't be thinking about this without the legacy you've created here. And I can't tell you how deeply we appreciate that. When you walk in, you go watch a basketball game, look up at the banners, right? Look up at those banners. There are UTPA banners. There are Pan American banners, right? Pan American University banners. There are banners from when we were in the Southland Conference. There are banners from when we were an NAIA team, right? Remember the basketball in the NAIA, right? All of those, that's part of our history. That's part of what we embrace. We're proud of it, and you are the people who made that history. So we want to thank you for everything you've done. You're always welcome here. Please do take a tour of campus. I think you'll be very impressed with what's happened here. But remember, it's just the beginning. We're just beginning to make investments here. So thank you for everything you do. I look forward to seeing you all around campus, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
How about another round of applause for founding president, Dr. Jack Ewing? You know, Dr. Bailey talked about the brain drain, how kids leave the valley and they don't tend to come back. Dr. Bailey was actually a part of that when I met him in 2010, when he came from Texas Tech University and had some of our biggest and brightest students in a room, and he said, at Texas Tech University, we have the Red Raider Promise. And that means that if your family makes below this income level, you can come to Texas Tech for free. I don't know how many kids took advantage of that, but I know that we took advantage of Dr. Bailey coming down here.
I forgot to tell them our Red Raider Promise, which, the UTRGV Advantage Scholarship.
Yes, sir.
Which is $100,000.
Well, they're not hearing you on Facebook Live. I think you need to come back up here.
Oh, you guys have the bonus.
I'll just give you the mic, okay? We can do that.
Yeah, I should have mentioned, by the way, if you know kids who are potential students, UTRGV Advantage, the Red Raider Advantage, I think it was $65,000 or something like that. If your family income was $65,000 or less, UT Austin has the very same. Then you don't pay any tuition or fees. The UTRGV Advantage is this: if your family income is $100,000 or less, $100,000 or less, right? And you are a full-time student, and you're in good standing. You can't come here and goof off and get this, right? You're gonna be a serious student. You pay no tuition, no mandatory fees. You gotta be a Texas resident, you gotta be in good standing, need to be a full-time student, but $100,000 or less, no tuition or fees. Now I'm gonna tell you something, stay tuned. That number's gonna go up. That number is going to go up. In a few weeks, I think in about 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to be able to announce that if your family income is $125,000 or less, you're a Texas resident, you're a full-time student, in good standing, no tuition, no fees. Think about that. That'll be the best by far in the country. So that is our commitment to you, the students, to the families of the Rio Grande Valley. That's our commitment to you and to the valley.
Thank you, sir. Breaking news that you only hear first, right here. I have to tell you, I was quite excited when I heard the $100,000. I immediately called my wife. I said, there's great news out of the university. She says, what? I said, if our family makes less than $100,000 a year, the kids can go to school for free. And she said, that's great. And I said, so I'm going to quit my job and let you be the sole provider, and I'm going to join the kids. And she said, but you forgot that good standing part. And I went, you're right. All right, enough of the reminiscing. Let's get back to our Hall of Fame ceremony. The first group that we're going to induct is comprised of our 1987, 1988, and 1989 and 1990 American South Conference champion cross-country teams. The 87 team was the first program in department history to win a conference championship at the NCAA Division I level. And this is the only time that we've had a program, in the words of LeBron James, not once, not twice, 4 consecutive years of championships. Hall of Famer Nancy Vidales won the individual American South Conference Championship in 1987. Thelma Morales followed that up with the individual title in 1988, a year that saw Pan American runners record 4 of the top 6 3-mile race times in program history, including Shanna Hale-Ginder, who won the program record. The runners combined for 17 all-conference honors, and Hall of Fame head coach Reed Harder was the conference coach of the year each season. How about giving that accomplishment a big round of applause? In attendance today, we are excited to have Shanna Hale-Ginder join us. Shanna, if you would just stand. There you are. Thank you, ma'am. Vanessa Olguin. Where's Vanessa? There you are. Thank you, Vanessa. Dimitri Pierce Kennedy. Thank you, ma'am. Diana Rodriguez. Deborah Smith. Valerie Soto. Sylvia Trevino. And Laura Arteaga Francis. So I'm going to jump in with a quick personal story. I married a runner. I don't know how I caught her, but I married a runner. This morning we're having breakfast. We're having our breakfast meeting, and she said, "What do you have on the agenda for today?" I said, "Well, I have the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, then I have basketball tonight. In between, I might go to the cross-country invitational meet that they're having in McAllen ISD. They want me to announce a couple of the winners there." She said, "Okay." I said, "By the way, do these names look familiar to you?" And she looked, first name, Laura Arteaga Francis. She says, "I ran with her." I said, "You did?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "And you do not know how fast she was." It was you, because you were the name that she recognized. She ran in Edinburgh, 1990 Miriam, tiny little thing. Now she's not tiny, but that's life. I've helped make her not tiny, so I understand the process. So, ladies, whoever our designated speakers are representing our cross-country Hall of Fame, I'm going to invite you to please come on. Who's our designated speakers for cross-country? Everybody's coming? Come on up. Come on. We are on a time limit. Dr. Guy Bailey gets an unlimited amount of time because he funds the whole thing, but for our athletes, we have 15 minutes. And apparently I left off the list Sonia Rodriguez. So my apologies, Sonia. All right, ladies.
I'll promise not to cry. Give me some moral support. We got you. Good afternoon. The ladies cross-country team would like to thank the Hall of Fame committee for nominating us for this award. It is truly an honor to be standing here today. Not only is it a privilege to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, but to experience this moment on stage with an inspiring group of women who share the same passion for running. Without a doubt, this would not have been possible without Coach Harder, who played a huge part in our success, winning 4 straight American South Conference championships. Even though Coach Harder could not be here today due to circumstances, we wanted to thank him for all the sacrifice he has made. The time spent away from his family, the driving the hundreds of miles to get us to the meets, the discipline he installed in each of us, the encouraging words he gave us when we had a good race or not so good, and always making sure we still prioritized our education. Thank you, Coach Harder. Looking back, I remember the first day of practice, Coach Harder sharing his expectations for us, and all that was running through my mind was, what in the world have I gotten myself into? 2-day practices? Is he joking? In high school, I only practiced once after school, never twice a day, much less getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning to run 6 to 8 miles, then to turn around and repeat that on top of track workouts in the afternoon. To be honest, the first few weeks were tough for me, and he could see that. He pulled me aside and said, "Trust me, I will get you where you need to be." And he was right. Despite the amount of hours and hard work each of us put in during cross-country season, competing almost every weekend and never really getting a weekend off, because even on our off weeks, you would find us on a scavenger hunt searching for Coach Harder in that little tan truck, running 15 to 18 miles down the canals, out in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes I wonder if he hid from us on purpose. Then we would all pile in the back of his truck, all 14 of us. No telling how many laws we would have broken today. It's a miracle no one fell out. Looking back, those were some of the best memories that made all of us, or made all of this craziness, shenanigans worth it, and ultimately shaped us into the best athletes we could be. The workouts may have been challenging, but Coach Harder always would find a way to make it fun. For example, one memory that comes to mind is when Coach Harder, Coach Martinez, Doug Erickson, and John Rivera challenged us to a race, but not just any race. We had to have 5 girls come in before they crossed the finish line. If we lost, we would have to drink dirty salt water. But if they lost, they would have to. Lucky for us, we won, so they had to drink up. I could go on and on about these memories that mean so much to me, but for the sake of time, I will not. Last but not least, I will leave you with a quote Coach Harder read somewhere along the way and passed it on to us to keep us motivated when things got difficult. And it goes like this: if he goes, I must go. If I'm hurting, he's hurting. Thank you for your time, and most of all, thank you, Hall of Fame Committee, for this great honor. Thank you.
I'm Valerie. I wanted to first and foremost thank Dr. Bailey for everything you're doing for the university. I think what has happened over the past 30 years has been remarkable to watch from the sidelines. So I did want to tell you thank you for that, and it's exciting to hear the news. Additionally, as Deborah mentioned, Coach Reed Harder is an outstanding coach, a man of integrity, value. He was like a father figure to a lot of us. Myself and some others are not from the Rio Grande Valley, but these ladies shared their families with us that were from here, so I definitely wanted to give a shout out to that. The Arteaga family provided such warmth and home and meals to us so many times, and gave us just a safe haven on the weekends, for those of us that were not able to get back to our homes. We all went to school at a time before the internet, before cell phones, so calling home on a long distance call was not something we could do on a regular basis. And so I wanted to thank the families that are from here that took us in oftentimes and followed us and gave us encouragement along the way. Deborah was a couple years older than me, and when I came along, she talked about her first few weeks here, and it's interesting to hear that from you because I felt the same way coming in as a freshman with the likes of you, Thelma, Nancy, Vanessa, Shanna. Oh my God, and to run with these ladies. I came from a town where basketball was everything, and that's what the girls' athletic program was known for in my hometown. And rightfully so, my coach won 5 state championships, and I was part of that program. I didn't even know about cross country, but because she was so incredibly hard on us and had us running all the time, I realized I had some stamina. And, when I showed up here, I was just running on pure natural talent and stamina. And to run with these girls, those 6 to 10 miles, twice a day, and they're just chatting on the runs like nothing, just and not even losing their breath. They're talking like I am right now, and it would freak me out. And I just couldn't see how they could do something like that. And I thought if I could just keep them within 10 feet of me, maybe I'll accomplish something, When I was in high school, our whole district wasn't known for running, but every now and then we would run out of district meets. And if I saw a team from the Valley and I could run with somebody from the Valley, I knew I might have a chance at a scholarship. So it was always such an honor to run along Laura, You know, she was from Edinburgh High School, and seeing her, and it's interesting, we have a picture, her parents had of us when we were in high school, and we didn't even know each other, but we were in a meet, and they caught a picture of us running beside each other at a state meet, and I still remember that. So it was always for me kind of like a measure of how I was doing, if I could run with any of the kids from the Valley. So I also have to give a shout out to the likes of Coach Martinez. If he would please stand up, he was an assistant coach for the team and heavily involved in recruitment. Doug Erickson is no longer with us, and he was also an assistant coach and recruited me. And, you know, it's no secret that there's a lot of poverty in the Valley, and for our generation, it was very tough to keep girls in school, much less in college. And so the scholarship program has been so essential for people like myself and a lot of other athletes to have gotten an education. And to be able to get it from a place like Pan American University, UT, Pan Am, UTRGV, it really is an honor and brings about a sense of pride for a Latina like me, especially being born and raised out of the area. And this is my home, and I do feel that way. So I'd like to, you know, also give acknowledgement to that and the growth that's upcoming with the football program and the swimming and diving teams, because it does provide athletic scholarships for so many of us that wouldn't otherwise be able to go to college and get a degree. So I'm very grateful, and I'm very happy and very proud to hear about those things. Finally, Dr. Barbara Gonzalez, thanks for the nomination. You've always had our backs, girl, and I really appreciate that. In so many ways, you've been there. You were there at the beginning, and the camaraderie that we shared with all the other athletic teams, the basketball, men's and women's programs, the baseball teams back then, just really, you know, kind of a sense of family and togetherness and encouragement. Every now and then a meal, or grabbing a meal from the cafeteria for some of us who couldn't make it on time. It meant so many little things meant the world to somebody like me that helped me along the way. And, you know, again, the Arteaga family provided homes for so many of us during the summer months and off seasons. And that contributed so much to some of us being able to stay here, continue our education, you know, and get our degrees. And I really hold that in value, and I just wanted to say that. And Shanna, oh my God, your work ethic, girl, and running. Shanna didn't know an easy day. And, you know, I really admire the example that you set and that the ladies that graduated before me set, and I hope in some way that I represented that for people who were behind me. Thank you all. I wanted to give a shout out to my family and friends at the back for the encouragement and support all along the way, and the other families that have shown up and friends to support us. Thank you very much.
I hadn't planned on saying anything today, but wow. UTPA, I think was UTPA for us when we graduated from here. Wow. There aren't enough words to say to the entire team, because it's not just our team. It's the entire team that goes into making this team. And I see a lot of parents out there, and parents, support your kids. Yes. My mom and dad drove to Jonesboro, Arkansas to watch us run. For me, probably a 6-minute race. For these ladies, probably a 5-minute race. Drove to Jonesboro and drove back. We didn't have the financial resources to stay there. Drove and drove back. That's what creates us, the families and the administration. Parents, support your kids. You don't have to say anything. Show up, and if you have to leave, leave. But show up for your kids. That means everything. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I'm trying to catch up. I'm showing her a picture of my wife. She says, I don't have my glasses. Ah. Is that a woman thing? Why don't women wear their cheaters when they have to? All right. How about another round of applause for our cross-country teams? 1987, 1988, 1989, and 1990. There's an old saying that says, if you can't beat them, join them. Well, our next inductee was a starting point guard for St. Edward's men's basketball in the early 60s. But his team just could not get past Pan American College. So he transferred to Pan Am, just in time for the 1963 National Championship. Jim Board then became an All-American point guard while helping his team to finish runner-up in the 1964 NAIA tournament. Jim was previously inducted into the Hall of Fame as a member of the 1963 National Championship team. To tell us more about Jim, please welcome his former teammate, Mr. Marty Urban.
Good morning. I had to tell him how good he is as an announcer. If you haven't heard him, you're really missing out. He is spectacular. He just carries a whole game. How many people have gone to a basketball game and heard him? He is that good. Listen, let me begin by thanking Jim for being part of the induction process. Jim, I really appreciate this, as much as I appreciate playing with you. It's very difficult to try to introduce somebody that has earned so much recognition here at this college. I can't say how many things he's been involved in, but ever since you've been here today, you've heard his name mentioned several times already. So Jim is very, very popular in the Valley. In fact, 60 years worth in the Valley since he came here. A lot of people know him from his family. He has Tina and Dawn. He's got Alexa here with her grandchildren, his grandchildren. And so as a family member, Jim was one of the best. Family. We didn't have anybody on the team that had a family besides Jim and the other Jim, Harder. So it was interesting, and they both lived next door to each other on 4th Street in a little shack. No lawn, a lot of dirt. But every Saturday, I'm trying to think of all the things I want to tell you that was not mentioned prior to me coming. It took my whole speech. But Jim was very, like his father, was a barber. And he gave us $3 haircuts every Saturday. And his 2 little girls, Dawn and Tina, would cheer for us. They were our biggest sponsors and supporters that we had. As far as his friends, so many of you people have done work with him over the years. And you know he means business. He's all business. If you read some of the work that he's accomplished in the brochure, you can see what he has brought to this university. As far as players are concerned, Jim McGurk is here. Interesting, I was just thinking while talking about Jim, and Jim was here for 2 years, my junior and senior years, from Indiana, Independence, Indiana. And interesting enough, he came down to take the place of another All-American, Hall of Famer, was Paul Friddle from Indiana. So the coach at the time had his theory that he would get the brains from the north and the brawns from the south. So coach, it was a pretty good philosophy. So we had 2 Indiana kids being the point guards, guy from New York City, Brooklyn, Jim McGurk, Brooklyn, excuse me, Jim, Bronx. Wow, I'm gonna get punished for that. So Jim was all business, all business. I remember one thing that came up, and we had a weight training coach at the time, and he came to an idea about strapping us with weights to make us stronger. And we had vests and we had ankles. It was way before this was even known. And we were all looking at him like, why are you going to put all this weight on us? And Jim was very quiet. He was very, very quiet. He raised his hand in the back. It's one of the first things he's really, as a team, we got together. And he said, Coach, how much weight can we strap on and safely play? And, you know, we're all worrying about putting any weight. He's wanting to put a lot of weight, a lot more than even the big fellas did on the team. So Jim was all business from day one, the minute he got here. So in 1961 is when he came to St. Ed's. We heard down here in the valley that one of the three Board brothers had signed with St. Ed's. And Jim set every record there was, but didn't really lose interest at St. Ed's, but it didn't meet his expectations, his standards. He wanted to come here. And in January of 1963, he brought his young family down to the valley on 4th Street. And they enrolled in school, and from that day on, has created a lifetime of friendship and outstanding ball playing to Pan American. It was perfect timing because the other guard from Indiana was graduating. And so he came in and led us during my last 2 years. Junior and senior year, we were both captains together. We won over 96% of the games, but unfortunately our star center decided to go pro and it left us home. So we couldn't replace Big Jack. His timeline, Jim's timeline, will be remembered over for his lifetime, going from $3 haircuts to over close to $1 million raised for the athletic department. So including orchestrating the Sam Williams Basketball Endowment Foundation, which began in 2015. Coach, I didn't know if you knew that, but I'm sure you did. Jim would tell you that a lot. But that's historic. You know, to come up with that kind of concept, his mind, his business mind was tremendous. So Jim Board had a tremendous career. He was a collegiate superstar. And most of all, I always felt like he was very courageous to bring Dawn and Donna, down from Indiana, Austin, not meeting his standards, to come down to University of Texas Pan Am. So, he must have known that today was going to happen. So Dean and Tona, and Tona and Dean, you got to know that he had some kind of vision to bring you across the country for this. So it's only fitting that at this time that we now honor James Jim Board, almost Mr. Brooks. I never hear your name of James. It's always. So anyway, we wish you all the luck in the world. We're so proud of you for getting into this level. And at no further ado, let's welcome Jim Board.
Man, you're crazy, man.
Thank you, Marty. A lot of lies in there, though. I want y'all to know that. First of all, welcome. I'm happy to see everyone here to represent the new inductees here for this year that are on this special day. I'm already confused. A little bit later, I want to brag about myself a little bit more than what Marty did. But anyway, at this particular time now, I would like to introduce one of my friends, close friends, and also a teammate. And that is a retired Major General, William F. Garrison. Bill served in the military for 30 years, and he's become just a good, close friend, and I appreciate him. Bill, if you will, please stand up. Be ready. Thank you, Bill. At this time, I'd like to share with you a little bit of my younger years. Back in Indiana, in the early 40s, my dad built my brother and I a basketball gym, so to speak, or in the backyard. And at that time, we started shooting hoops, and at a very early age. And then the following, although I didn't start playing organized basketball until the 5th grade at Holy Trinity Elementary School. And while at Holy Trinity, when I got to the 7th grade, we actually placed second in the state of Indiana in the CYO League. And then moving on, I moved on into naturally to high school at Our Lady of Providence. And at that time, we won the sectional in Indiana that year. And it's back in those days, it was a little bit more difficult to advance in the state tournament because there was only one class. So we were playing with the bigger schools as well. And I was fortunate enough to have a pretty good year. We won the sectionals in 57. And after that, I moved to got to the actual senior year. Wasn't quite as productive as my junior year, but anyway, I ended up in the leading scorer in Southern Indiana with a 21-point average. Anyway, so I'd like to, at this time, I'd like to recognize a number of people. First of all, and especially my mom and dad. My mom, she was a stay-at-home mom and wife, and she was raised there in Southern Indiana on a little small farm. And at that time, when she left the farm, met my dad, and naturally they got married and had 3 sons. And after that, naturally my dad was a barber, as Marty had mentioned, and actually I got fired down here. I was cutting ball players' hair, and they made me quit. Are they going to take my scholarship? So I quit. Anyway, my dad went to high school in Louisville, Kentucky, at Male High School. Back at that time, he took up boxing, and he would have and he boxed for a couple of years, but he also realized that he wasn't the actual boxing wasn't actually for him. But however, there were some of the local young boxers that was encouraging him and wanting him to actually help train him. You all probably remember Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, right? Well, my dad was asked to train him. Just kidding about Ali, just kidding. But anyway, and then after that, my dad became a good athlete himself. Later in his years, he became a very good bowler, and he also was a respectable golfer at the time. And I feel like after I think back, I feel that after the years there, that my brothers and I, Tom and Jerry, inherited my dad's athletic genes. At that time, too, both of my brothers went to St. Edward's University on a basketball scholarship. So the 3 of us had basketball scholarships at St. Edward's University. And then for six straight years, we wore the board boys wore number 21 on our basketball jersey in high school at Our Lady of Providence. And at that time, it seemed like that there was a phrase in the newspaper that at that particular time that everything was banking on the boards. Actually, I stole that from the Austin Statesman in Austin there at the newspaper. One night, we were playing as Texas Wesleyan, and that particular night, man, I was tearing up the nets. Scored 36 points that night, and my brother Tom had also had, or he had 24 that same evening. And the next day, we read in the newspaper that it stated in there that last night, everything was banking on the boards. So that's where I got that phrase. Back in, while at St. Ed's, I actually played there for 2 years, and while I was with the Hilltoppers, my freshman year happened to be my best year there. I averaged 25 points a game for in the Big State Conference at that time, and then after that, I was also selected on for both years on the all conference team. So that was reward. But at that time, as Tony had mentioned here, that if you can't beat them, you have to join them. Well, that's what happened to me. By making a phone call to Coach Sam, we visited a little bit, and after the phone call, within 2 days, I was here in Edinburgh, getting eligible for the Pan Am basketball team, and that was quite an ordeal at one point. But actually, at this time too, after those years, which was what 59 years, I'm still here. While here at Pan Am, I was a member of the national championship team, and then my junior year, I was on as Marty had mentioned, I was the actual point guard on the runner-up team at that year. And at the same time, I had the honor of being voted on the second team, All-American team at the national tournament, which was, and that actually at that time put me in an elite group with Lucius Jackson, Mitchell Edwards, and Jim McGurk. Jackson and Edwards was voted, or they were in on the all-tournament team, on the first team, and Jim followed them with making the second team in 63. And in 64, when I was made the all-tournament team, again, Jackson and Mitchell Edwards was on the first team, and then I made the second team that year. So that was a real experience, and you know, there's just not a lot of young men, women, whatever, have a chance of actually playing for a national championship, let alone winning it or coming in second, or whatever the case may be. So that's always an honor. In actual, I think pretty much that's, as Forrest Gump would say, that's just about all I have to say for that. There is, and last but not least, I would like to introduce my family. Most of them or some of them are here anyway. And my three daughters, Tina, Dawn, and Alexis, and their spouses, John, Billy, and Adam. And then my grandchildren, I have 8 grandchildren, James and Dwayne Alexander. And then the Edwards family, we have Aaron, Macy, and Hutton Edwards. And then Alexis, my youngest daughter, she has 3 kids, 3 children, and Avery, Reese, and Easton. And actual James, my oldest grandson, about 7 months ago, honored me with my first great grandchild. Thank you, James. And then in the next 2 to 3 weeks, Dwayne Alexander and his wife Molly is going to honor me with my second great grandchild. One other thing that I didn't mention that I wanted to mention, naturally, giving back. And that's always been really important to me. And back in 2001, a number of the championship team met up in Houston at Marty Duran's house, and we decided back then that we wanted to do something special for Coach Sam Williams. And at that time, it became a reality. We've raised better than $265,000 for this Coach Sam Williams endowment. And at that point, we didn't actually stop there at that time. We raised an additional $235,000 for the athletic program. So we took a little bit, almost $500,000 that we put our efforts into. And you know, and what encouraged us, I think, to do something like this, most of us cannot write a check for $50,000, $100,000, but we can give them our time. And that's what we tried to do at this point. And so again, that's pretty much all I have to say as far as Skunk would say. Thank you.
How about a round of applause for Mr. Jim Moore, ladies and gentlemen? I'm about to drop some knowledge on you. We all celebrate Jim's birthday. It's Cinco de Mayo, so we get fajitas and margaritas for everybody. So, thank you, sir, for joining us again for all these years. Our next inductee, her induction has been a long time coming. She's the third winningest player in our women's tennis program history. She's always been reluctant to allow her name to even be on the ballot. She pushed for other women's players to be inducted, and then was thrilled when the 1989 American South Conference Championship team joined the Hall of Fame 3 years ago. Now today, it's her turn. The Hall of Fame committee, of which Dr. Barbara Gonzalez is a part of, told her, you are now on the ballot. And it was selected. The voters agreed. We have a video from her former coach, who was unfortunately unable to join us today. But can I tell you that since the announcement has been made, and in the days prior to this event, I have had the pleasure of meeting quite a few of Dr. Gonzalez's teammates, former teammates, through the power of Twitter. And Dr. Mary Jane Hedrick of Dripping Springs reached out, and she asked that we send Barbara all of her love, congratulate her, and made sure that she knew that today was her special day. So it's my pleasure to carry that message and share that with you, Doctor. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll turn your attention to the video screen, and we'll hear from Mr. David Cross.
Well, here we are today. We're out at a very familiar place. We're at the Cox Stadium tennis courts, and I'm sure Barbara Gonzalez will remember this place at the same time as we are right now. 3 o'clock, that's practice time, Barb. You remember those days. I'm so happy and so honored to present you today, Barbara, to be in the UTRGV Athletic Hall of Fame. We are Bronx at heart, but we do represent our institution, and so proud of you and what you've done. This is a huge day for you. I know this is so important to you because you're such a huge fan, such a loyal alumni to our institution, and that just goes on to add about it, to speak about your character. Been so happy to watch you develop as a player when I was your coach, as a person, as your friend outside of tennis now, and watching you as a phenomenal wife to Toby and a mother to Aunt Lisa, and I think they would agree as well. I first knew Barbara in, I'm thinking the 1980s, maybe 86, and she was at a junior college that dissolved her women's tennis program. I got a phone call from coach, said, hey, you gotta get this girl, and next thing you know, Barbara Bodetta shows up in Edinburgh, Texas, and we offered her a place and a home, and she's still here today, so we're so happy for that. While she was here, she played on our conference championship team when we were in the American South Conference, one of our first women's sports to ever win a conference title, and Barbara was a huge part of that team. Barbara's always shown leadership. She's a go-getter to the max. Those of you who know Barbara, she is a go-getter. Whatever she does like a cheerleader. And so those are some of the things I really, really like about Barbara. Her ability, she had an okay serve. She had a minimal backhand, but the forehand, she developed the name Bam Bam. And to this day, she still carries that name. So she, to this day, still is in touch with many of our other athletes that were on that women's championship team, and Barb is a real core to that. and arranging their Zoom meetings and whatnot. So that's always exciting to see the relationships going beyond the court. Characteristics of Barb, probably my favorite one about Barb is she's, and I know Toby and her dad will agree with this, stubborn. Barb might be one of the more stubborn people I know, but once she gets past that, she turns it into persistence, and she drives to finish and to be the best she can be. Once you get Barbara riled up, she just gets tough, and then she always pursues. I know she told me recently the story about her achieving her doctorate. That would be Dr. Gonzalez. That just blows my mind that athletes of mine are actually doctorates, and actually 3 from that team that she was on are doctorates in education. So so Barb told me she was struggling, maybe not finishing, but I knew Barb, once she gets started, she had to get the distractions out of the way, and now she's Dr. Gonzalez. So proud of you, Barb, and I know your family and your and Toby are as well, and baby girl Lisa too. So again, I'm so honored to be a part of Barb's life and to be able to introduce her today for a long awaited award of hers. Her commitment to the institution, her commitment to the sport, to our team, and to the community. I feel like she's so deserving of this award. Barb, on a personal note, I feel like our lives were put together many years ago, and you are clearly one of the strands in the tapestry of my life, and my life is so blessed to have you in it, and congratulations, and you and your family have an awesome day today. Go Bronx.
Jonah, thank you for capturing that with Coach Cross. I really thought he was going to roast me a lot more than that, so that was really, really good. I just wanted to start really quick. Dr. Bailey, I am so excited with everything that you're doing for this university. And like Jim had said earlier, I was one of those that I stepped away from the university. I was hurt, I was upset, but seeing the vision and seeing the people that you put, like Chase, and I've met some of the coaches. Because of that, I've become a lifetime member of the varsity club. So I really thank you. It's an honor for me to have the opportunity to stand before you today as an inductee of the class of 2022 UTRGV Athletic Hall of Fame. I am truly humbled, honored, and blessed to be in this year's class with these elite honorees. The women's cross-country team. I can't tell you how excited it was to see you last night. I think we made more noise than anybody else when we saw each other. It was so great to see you, and what an honor it is for me to be with you. Jim Lord, knowing you, all your hard work, what an honor it is for me to be inducted with you. Joe Hernandez and Renee Torres, congratulations to you all. I want to thank the Hall of Fame committee for inducting me to the Hall of Fame. This is an incredible honor and privilege and an accomplishment I will always treasure with great pride. Thank you. Even though I'm the committee, I did not pay anyone to put me on the ballot. I know some of you were probably thinking that. As I look out, I see many smiling faces. My family, my extended family. Thank you, my compadres, for being here. Laura and Hilda, thank you. You are my family. I've always been asked, why did I stay in the Valley? It's because meeting people like you. They have made my start, so thank you so much for being with me. My work family. How excited it is to see my Garrett family here. Miss Gonzalez also for being here. Rob, Ruby, Mike Cruz. Julio, we've adopted you. You're a part of our family. Thank you so much for being here. My former athletes. Rachel and Chrissy, I can't tell you, you're my first 2 athletes that I coached here in the Valley. Thank you so much for being with me this day. And my former roommates. Oh my gosh, Shanna and Vanessa. And here we are. Shanna, who we thought 2 small West Texas girls would be up here today, right? Here we are. I've always said that I live a blessed life. Looking at all of you today reaffirms that belief. God is good. Thank you for sharing this special moment with me. There's no possible way I could stand up here today and thank everyone that played a role in me being here. But I'd like to take this time to recognize some of those individuals. First, I would like to thank my mother, Margarita Barrera, that is here. Mom, can you please wave? I know she's embarrassed. Mom, you've been with me every step of the way through the good times and the bad that I've experienced throughout my life. You've always been there to encourage, console, and motivate me when I needed it most. Mom, you've made a lifetime of sacrifices for me. Mom, you missed your college graduation to watch me play at the state tournament. I've never forgotten that. Thank you, and I want to do that in front of everyone. Mom, thank you for everything that you've done for me. Unfortunately, my dad, Simon Barrera, could not travel to be with me today. My dad introduced me to tennis and fueled my love for sports. He taught me to be tough, finish what I started, and always work harder. I'm grateful that he hung up the phone on me when I said I wanted to go back home because I wanted to leave the valley, and told me, no, you're not coming home, when I desperately wanted to leave. Dad, you are right. Staying at UTPA and playing tennis was the best thing for me. And I will tell you, RGB, this is my home. Next, I would like to thank some of my family members who are able to join me today. My beautiful nieces, Sarah and Karen, thank you for driving the 9 hours from San Angelo to be here with me. My brothers, Bruce and Gavin, were unable to join me. I love you to the moon and back. I know you're watching right now. Thank you for always having my back. Always thank you for pushing me. Yeah, a little hard on me sometimes, but you know I can take you both down when I needed to. But thank you so much. I love you both. To my beautiful daughter, Annalise, you are the joy of my life, Ani. And to my husband, Toby Gonzalez, Dr. Bailey, he attended Tech, and I dragged him to the Valley, and he's here with me. We were college sweethearts, and you were always there with me through my tennis career. Thank you for always being my rock and my biggest fan. I love you. I know, right? I'm getting mushy here. Standing at this podium today, I realize I've come a long way. I went from being a girl who started playing tennis in 8th grade, winning district as a freshman with a racket purchased with green stamps. Do you remember those? We bought groceries? And didn't know even how to keep score until the summer of my sophomore year. So I won district and didn't know I won until the girl went to shake my hand. I know. So let me go back to that racket, because my husband's like, honey, do you really want to say that? Because your dad could afford rackets. I'm like, well, I know. But I would tell my dad, I need some better equipment. I want some new rackets. He goes, Barbara, it's not the equipment, it's the player. I'm like, Dad, but you got some new King Cobra clubs in the garage. Barbara, go to your room. You don't need anything. So I would remind my dad. My dad always had the best. My high school coach, Clinton Bowman, to this day loves to tell the story that I did not know how to keep score. Thank you, Coach Bowman, for always believing in me and being a force in my life. Love you, Coach. To Coach Cross, I'm really glad he's not here because I don't think I would be able to do this speech in front of him. I think you can tell that man plays a very special part in my life. Coach, thank you for taking a chance on a small town West Texas girl from Denver City to compete in D1 tennis. I remember the call. You said we're near the beach, palm trees, and tropical Texas, and I was like, I am so there. Then I get here, and we go to pick up some recruits. As I'm talking to him, he's like, God, like your accent is really bad. The big West Texas accent. I said, is it really that bad? He goes, don't talk anymore. And I'm like, okay, I'm 10 hours away. My dad hung up on the phone. I am stuck here in the valley. Not knowing that that phone call from Coach Cross would lead me to my best life. That phone call led me to being part of a talented group of women. These women loved to win as much as I did and weren't afraid to work. And we weren't joking about those 3 o'clock workouts. I think we would end up meeting the track teams on Tuesdays and Thursdays, running a 800 for warm-up, 3 400s for warm-up, 400s, 5 200s, and some 50s, and that was after 3-hour practice. I know some of y'all joked like, we were joining your team. We were like, no, never, never, never. But I know that Coach Harder gave some of those workouts to Coach Cross, so I need to talk to Coach Harder later on. That work led us to a conference championship. It led to me winning a single and doubles title as a conference champ, and also an induction 3 years ago, and a lifelong friendship. My teammates, my sisters, to this day continue to be part of my life. Kim, Tanya, Leah, Chris, and Mary Jane, thank you for making me a better player, and thank you for making me a better person. You are one of the reasons I'm standing in front of you. I love you. Love you, girls. And in closing, Coach Cross, I truly do not have the words to convey on how much I'm grateful to you for recruiting me. You have played an enormous role in my life. Come to think of it, my degrees that I've earned from this beautiful university to my employment in the Valley have been connected in one way to another to that phone call, being a Brock athlete. I could go on, but Coach would not want me to do that because he gets embarrassed with that. Thank you for believing in me and always being the one that kicked me in the pants when I needed it, when I wasn't my best. Thank you, Coach Cross, for everything. You will always have a special place in my heart. Again, thank you, committee. Thank you, Dr. Bailey, and thank you all.
How about another round of applause for Dr. Barbara Gonzalez? All right, I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope everybody's feeling good. We're on the final stretch. We're in the home. We're getting there. We're getting there. Our next inductee graduated as the baseball program record holder in career batting average while ranking 5th in stolen bases. He was a 1975 All-American. Hernandez set the single season program for record for hits, total bases, RBI, batting average, and home runs. After helping to lead the 1975 team to a program record 900 winning percentage at the NCAA regionals, Hernandez went on to be drafted by the Chicago Cubs. This is the part where I'm going to tell you to bust out your Kleenex, because now we're going to talk baseball. As we saw with Jack Ewing in the first 5 minutes, he teared up, started bawling. So I'm going to warn you now to bring out your Kleenex, because to tell us a little bit more about Mr. Hernandez, we'd like to welcome his daughters, Stephanie Jo Hernandez Henderson and Laura Ashley Hernandez, to come tell us about their dad.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Henderson, and this is my sister Laura Hernandez. We are here to introduce our dad, Joseph Hernandez, as an honoree for the Baseball Hall of Fame. Our dad's baseball journey started at a very young age. The love of the game was supported by his 3 brothers and loving parents while growing up. His work ethic, determination, and raw talent drove him to be the best he could be very early on. After After T-ball, Little League, and All-Stars, he attended Milby High School, where he met his loving and supportive wife, Sonia. They have been married for the last 48 years, and I'm certain she can tell you some great stories about the journeys they've been on. During his time at Milby, he was the very first to make varsity sophomore, junior, and senior year. He broke several records, some of which were still in place when Milby High School inducted him into their own Baseball Hall of Fame in 2001. San Jacinto College was next, and they made it to the Junior College World Series, where he hit a record-breaking 450-foot home run. He then attended Pan American University, or UTRGV as you all know it now, which is why we're here today. He led the team in at-bats, hits, batting average, and RBIs, and was also awarded the Jody Ramsey Memorial Award in 1975 for his character, leadership, dedication, ability, and conduct on and off the field. The same year, he was drafted by the Chicago Cubs, and he would go on to play for their organization for the next 5 years. One of the most proud professional accomplishments came in the form of a Silver Glove in 1977. This award is presented to the 9 players in the minor leagues who were nominated to the Rawlings National Association All-Star Fielding Team. It just so happens that was the year I was born. My love for baseball is all because of him and my grandfather. We share a unique bond that during baseball season and make sure to catch at least one game in person every year together.
After his baseball career, he worked his way up at the same company for 25 years to help provide for his family. With 2 daughters who chose dance and theater, he wasn't able to share his baseball talents with us. He did, however, share and support his nephews the best he could, as well as helping out with the church's high school baseball team. Dad and Mom are now retired, and they like to spend their time going out to eat and supporting their 3 grandkids, which are all hers. Their oldest granddaughter played soccer, and you see them in the stands at every game they could get to. Granddaughter number 2 is the softball player, and you can often find Dad with her at the cages working out. The love, dedication, and work ethic for the game was definitely passed to her. And his only grandson, his namesake, is now playing tennis. Since Dad is an avid racquetball player, it's only a matter of time before he's on the courts with him too. A well-rounded man doesn't just consist of the athletic accomplishments that brought him here this afternoon. It's playing with his kids growing up and grandkids now, giving guidance, helping his family in times of strife and illness, and celebrating in times of joy. It's the many games of pull my finger, surprise tickle attacks, or pointing to something off in the difference just to get you to look so he can trick you. It's him changing out of pajamas at night to make a store run because someone is hungry. It's the rides he gives the grandkids to their many practices and the food he buys them because he knows it's their favorite. We couldn't be prouder and want to thank UTRGV for honoring him today. We are excited to present our dad, Joseph Hernandez.
Said I wasn't gonna do it.
I'm telling you, baseball guys.
Okay. I'm supposed to be known for having ice in my veins and not to be emotional, but okay. I'm gonna have to preface this a little bit by saying everything that you're gonna hear me say that I have written down here, it may surprise you, it may shock you, it's all true. So help me. Okay. It's a great honor to be back in the Valley after so many years have gone by. They go by faster the older we get, or at least that's what some people say. I truly appreciate all the kind words about my on-field accomplishments. I honestly never saw this induction becoming a reality. It was difficult to locate me over the past few years. I would have really enjoyed being here in 2018. As Jack mentioned earlier, our entire 1975 team, that was my senior year, was inducted into the University Athletic Hall of Fame. It never even crossed my mind because I was off the grid, so to speak. I found out about it when I received an awesome email from Jack Ewing, chairman of the Hall of Fame committee. His email was informing me of my selection for this year's induction. I also want to thank Jonah Goldberg. He's over there. He is back there. He's a senior associate athletic director for communications here at UTRGV, for reaching out to Milby High School in Houston to try and find out if anyone could get in touch with me or may have an idea where I might be. Milby basketball coach, Coach Honey, now retired, was the all-time winningest coach in Houston, probably the entire state and beyond. He happened to have my email address from the annual Fellowship of Christian Athletes charity golf tournament in Rockport, Texas. My brothers also played in this event with me. He was excited to send my email address to Jonah, and here we are. Speaking of Milby, one of my high school varsity teammates is here. Joe Trevino and his wife Mary. We were the Mexican connection. 2/3 of our starting outfield our senior year. We are very proud of that fact. I found out, they're right seated right over there. Thank you, Joe. Mary. I found out, well, I overheard a conversation in high school saying that we were poor because of the neighborhood we lived in down by the Houston Ship Channel refineries. Well, that was news to me. My dad worked shift work, worked hard after serving his time in the Air Force towards the end of the Korean War. It was with Dad and my always proud of her 4 sons' mom's love and always being involved in our little league years with Dad coaching us that helped shape who we are today. Fast forward a few years, through high school and college and pro ball with the Cubs organization, we came back to Houston again. I was contacted and persuaded to play in a Latin American team league in Houston. Guess who our coach was? My dad. We won the championship that year. How fortunate was I? How fortunate was I to have that awesome experience with him after so many years had gone by. Players loved playing for him, and he knew how to win. One of my teammates from that team, also an outfielder, is here today. Randy Mendoza and his wife Yolanda from San Antonio, right over there. Thank you. Randy's still playing in the over 55 league, San Antonio Bombers, and still winning World Series championship rings. Thank you for being here. I also want to thank my older brother, Ron Hernandez, and his wife, Selma, for coming down from Corpus Christi. They're seated right over there. Thanks for being here. His critical and important question for me was, what are we going to eat? Right? How many of you have heard of the singer Selena? Okay, all right. Some of you probably saw her in concert. Well, our daughter Stephanie, right there, was one of the professional dancers performing behind Gloria Estefan, who was singing a Selena song at her 10-year anniversary tribute at NRG Stadium in Houston. She also performed on stage for the Houston Metropolitan Dance Company. Proud of you and Thomas, her husband Thomas, right there. Thank you. He was also a professional dancer. You didn't think I was going to mention that. Grandkids, Sonia Irene, she's a freshman in college, and then Sienna and Joseph. Our younger daughter, Laura, was a Texas A&M Corpus Christi graduate. She expected to graduate magna cum laude, but one of her professors decided to adjust her grade at the last minute. She's still a smarty pants. Well, she also performed on stage many theater performances, and we're very proud of you too. This past Wednesday, freelance writer Mark May wrote an article for The Monitor, and one of the quotes was, I'm gonna have to look over at you every now and then.
I'm here for you.
My wife Sonia, this is one of the quotes. My wife Sonia supported us while I was getting my degree. That's her seated right there. I'm gonna have to remind you, everything that's coming afterwards, it's all true. It's all true. No joke. I have to keep reminding myself that it actually happened, but anyway. The statement of her supporting us while I was getting my degree, this statement cannot even begin to touch the surface of everything she has had to endure over the years. Immediately after my senior year was done, I was drafted by the Cubs and started my career in the Florida State League in Pompano Beach, Florida. We lived in an apartment complex right across from A1A and the Intercoastal Waterway. Across the street were some high-rise condos overlooking our complex. I was playing well and found out in the morning I was being promoted to AA back in Midland, Texas. My flight was within a couple of hours, and I was gone. That night, she was by herself and woke up to the sound of a guy crawling on the floor towards her bed. I think I heard her scream all the way from Texas. Fortunately, the guy ran out and back across the street to the condos. A teammate and his wife lived in our complex, so she went to their place. Someone had been watching when I was leaving with a suitcase, and she came back alone after dropping me off at the airport. We ended up flying her sister to Florida so she wouldn't be alone on the drive back to Texas. Well, we lived in Midland, then came back to Houston since we weren't sure where we were going to be the following year. She continued to work, always working, with the title business and legal papers to help support us. Fast forward to 1977, Sonia was pregnant with Stephanie, and a friend drove her all the way to Midland to visit because she was still working. Stephanie was born in November after the season was over. I worked in a chemical company as a contractor during the winter years. I probably had my best year in 77. I was the MVP of my team and winning the Silver Glove, as Stephanie mentioned earlier, and hitting over 300. Everyone assumed I would move up to AAA the following season. Well, it didn't happen. We were back in Midland with a young daughter. It was becoming increasingly difficult for us with the uncertainty of where we would end up. Well, Sonia continued to work, as always. I did move up to AAA the following season, and some in the organization were wondering why I wasn't moving faster. Unfortunately, the people making the decisions were thinking a different way. At this point, we were in Wichita, Kansas. We came back to Houston, and after hurting my arm during the season, I could see the handwriting on the wall. And my career came to an end. Sonia picked right up where she left off when we got back to Houston, started working again. The only thing I ever asked for was to have a good retirement job and to be able to provide for my family. I ended up, after a few years of doing contract work, being hired by the family-owned specialty chemical company. Sonia was obviously still working. We both worked hard for decades to provide for our family, at least until 2015. Here comes some of that stuff I was telling you about. You thought it was the guy crawling on the floor, right? No. In 2015, well, I was just giving you a little insight into how difficult it was for her during my minor league years. Well, that was a cakewalk compared to the 2 brain surgeries and 7 eye surgeries she's had since Stephanie was born. Thanks, Stephanie. She lost her vision since then in her left eye. Totally losing feeling on her left side, arm and leg, from here all the way down. Not once, but twice. Totally devastating for a person who was so independent. She lost her freedom of being able to drive. Fortunately, at the time, our son-in-law, Thomas Henderson right there, he's also a Houston fireman and EMT and a big engine operator now, was able to come over to our house to help her to get to the ER as fast as he could. They lived a few blocks away. I was working and I couldn't leave immediately because I was in control of the entire process. It was all Honeywell computer systems going at max rates. I had to wait for my relief for that night shift to get there. Luckily, he was only 10 minutes away. He lived in Deer Park, Texas, close to our company. I got to the ER and the doctor shows us a scan of her brain. It was a quarter-sized gray shaded area, and he says 6 words you never want to hear. Life flight is on the way. Still there?
I'm right here for you.
Okay. So I just wanted to give a little background on what she has been through. As difficult as it is for us, as difficult as it is for her to travel, guess what? She's still here. started out supporting me all these years ago when we first came to the Valley, and she's still doing it. She's still doing it. One of the most strong-willed. Still there?
Right there.
One of the most strong-willed, fiercely determined people I have ever known. She always says there's someone that is worse off than I am. I'm better off having you in my life all these years. Still there? How many of you have ever heard or participated in a dollar dance? Can I see your hands? Okay, you know what a dollar dance is at a wedding. Okay. Well, Sonia and I came to Pan Am with the little bit of money from our dollar dance, and we got married right before we came to Pan Am for my junior and senior years. We had very little. One of the reason I mentioned very little is leading into it because there was a small bakery that had a promotion of a free homemade pie for any Bronx player that hit a home run. Well, it was even more humid and back then, and a lot hotter, and the girl to run, all the exceptional runners know how hot it was. They know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, not many home runs have been hit up to that point, so I guess that was the reason they did that promotion. So anyway, after a few weeks, maybe a month and a half, I was coming in to collect my 10th pie. And they looked at me when I came in, "Are you really on the baseball team?" So they smiled. I mean, they honored their promotion, and my wife and I really enjoyed those pies. Now, Jim Board reminded me of something when he mentioned Cassius Clay. It reminded me of my mom during Christmas time when we were very young. She worked at the Lowe's theaters downtown Houston for Christmas money, little extra money. And Cassius Clay was in Houston for a heavyweight fight, and she actually got his autograph as Cassius Clay before he changed his name. But thank you, Jim. That reminded me of that little tidbit there. But I can't tell you how honored I am to be here to represent the university, and to all my family and friends that are here, and to all of you and all the other honorees, all of you that are in this ballroom. I'll always have a special place in my heart for every one of you. Thank you very much.
All right, let me hear it. What did I tell you about those baseball guys? I was already set up for the girls. I was like, man, these two lovely ladies are going to come up and they're going to talk about their dad, and we're all going to get emotional right there. And they just brought, hey, this is what we do. This is how it is. This is how it was. And then Dad comes up and he does that story on us. Being married close to 25 years, you never underestimate the strength of a woman. So, thanks for that. Okay. Before I let everybody go, it's time to introduce our Hall of Honor. This year, we'd like to welcome Renee Torres. He played baseball here in the late 60s and set the program record for most consecutive games without an error while helping the team to 2 postseason appearances. Off the field, though, Torres has made a major impact in the Rio Grande Valley. Over the last 20 years, he has spread history of RGV baseball via oral presentations and exhibits throughout this region. He also loaned the Coach Al Ogletree memorabilia to UTRGV Athletics for the Coach Al Ogletree Museum during the opening weekend of our 2020 season. For his work as a sports historian, Torres has been inducted into the Rio Grande Valley Sports Hall of Fame. We'd like to welcome the members of the RGV Sports Hall of Fame that are here. Thank you. He's been inducted into the Leonajo Baseball Hall of Fame and the Laredo Latin American International Sports Hall of Fame. I'm just going to bring him up. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Renee Torres. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You got it.
Got some bad knees. Sliding to second base was always a challenge. What started here changed my world. I come from a different decade, from the 1960s. It was an era when there was no kneeling in baseball. It was an era when kids like myself, at 6 years old, lined up in the foul lines. Little League Baseball. We saluted the flag. We were very proud of the flag. The Star-Spangled Banner became a very popular song for me as I played all the levels of baseball. It was an era when the snacks was a piece of gum. Today, wow, have you seen the snacks kids get today? Well, back then we got a piece of gum, and we were elated. Because getting a piece of gum during that era was something to celebrate. We played baseball in the sandlots. We made up our own rules. We were very creative when it came to the guidelines of playing sandlot baseball. We designed our own park. We made up our own rules. And there were no adults to cry foul. That was the era when I was a kid. And it's important to know that. I've never written about myself. I've never bragged about myself. But I'm going to do it today. I also love music. And I listen to Wolfman Jack. You remember him? Of course. And I also listened to Paul Harvey in the 70s. And now you know the rest of the story. We made our own baseballs out of socks. Not the socks with little holes, the socks that had big holes. The little socks, or the socks that had little holes, we kept. The socks with big holes, we wrapped them in with electrical tape. Electrical tape, ladies and gentlemen, kept baseball together. And I say that because if you had a regular bat that broke, you didn't throw it away. Back then, you used nails and electrical tape to keep it together. And that's what we did. Electrical tape kept my tennis shoes that my sister bought me at Crest for $2. Didn't last the whole season, but it was wrapped in electrical tape. It would last the whole season. That was my background. I'm being honored today because mostly of my writing, being a historian. So I know history. I know the history of this institution that I'm going to talk about. And also I'm going to speak about my background, my family, and also I'm going to end by making a request. Let me tell you about my family. I was the youngest of 11. And when you're born to a family of 11, you become independent very early in your life. I would sign my own report cards ever since I was in first grade. My family didn't know about grades. My dad, and I'm going to cry as I go along because I'm a ball player. As a matter of fact, I cry over a good steak. Those are the words of Henry Fonda. My father was illiterate. He started playing baseball in the 1920s. By the 30s, because of an injury, didn't play any ball anymore. He was a coach, a manager, and a secretary of a team in 1936. So how can an illiterate person become a secretary of a team? But I tell you what, he did more than people that knew how to read and write. Everybody in the community knew Tito Torres. That was my dad. So I decided as a 5th grader that I'm going to teach my dad how to sign his name. Before that, he identified himself with the letter X. That's how he identified himself. So when I gave him my report card, he signed it with an X. But I said to myself as a 5th grader, I'm going to teach my dad how to sign his name. And I did. That was one of the most celebrated days in his life. He knew how to sign his name. The things that we take granted today was a big moment for him. He knew how to sign it. I didn't tell him about the explanation about grades because he didn't know. He didn't have to know that. Just sign in his name. Just sign that. You don't have to do anything else. And he never asked. So when you come in family 11, everybody goes their way. I bring a report card home, nobody looks at it. I was a pretty good C student, in fact. And I remember my elementary days, my junior high days, my baseball days, my high school days. I never studied. I never brought a book home to study in all those years. I was not a good role model for the kids of today. But I passed. I was consistent in what I did. Not only in the baseball part, because the records don't show, but I made one error in 3 years as a starting center fielder. I was almost flawless. I was almost flawless, or was flawless, when I retired as a professor, assistant professor at UT Brownsville. I didn't miss a day of work in 25 years. That's how consistent I was, on the diamond and off the diamond. By the end of my career, I had 1 year of sick leave. 1 year of sick leave. That's how consistent I was. I was not an All-American, All-Conference, All-District, or All-World. I was consistent. But I'm very proud to say that I was All-Barrio. I was the best kid in the neighborhood. And you can take that to the bank. But all of this, I didn't do it alone. My teachers, my coaches, my dad, of course. And unfortunately, my mother died when I was 1 year old. I never met my mom, but I had 2 sisters, teenage sisters who took care of 7 boys. They became women before their time. They worked very hard to help me survive those days. Now, today I'm being recognized as a sports historian, and I will tell you about that. I've never written about myself, and I've never bragged about myself, but today I'm going to brag. Because this is the audience to brag to. As an elementary student, I was one of the top 5 athletes in my school. Resaka Elementary, one of the poorest schools in Brownsville. There were 5 good athletes, and I was one of them. I was the only one that could play basketball. And we all got vaccinated. How about that? When we saw the nurses coming toward our school, Mrs. Garcia, bring your kids to the hallway. Wow, that was my teacher. We were scared as heck. But we all got vaccinated. Unlike today. And I'm not mocking the people of today that don't get vaccinated. That's fine. If you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your business. But what I'm telling you is that it was a pretty constant that all of us got vaccinated. And we were afraid as heck of the nurses. They all came dressed in white with their little nice white hat. And my sister was one of them. She was a nurse for 30 years. She's 88 years old today. She couldn't be here today. But the fact that I'm being recognized as a sports historian, how did I start that? Well, I was in a restaurant in Brownsville, reading the Brownsville Herald, and I opened the page to the sports page, and I was reading a story about this team from California, from the 1940s. And I said to myself, who's writing about our boys? Who's writing about our girls? Who's writing about our people? Nobody. So I took the job. No pay, but I took the job. From then on, and you'll tell my wife, because she'll complain about this. Not complain, but just remind me. And the other person that was also so close to me and so spent so many years with me, I met her in a blind date. And I asked my friend, who is she? Oh, she's from the private school, from Villa Maria graduate. Oh my God. She wants to date a guy from the public schools? Impossible. I'm not going to go. After a while, I was convinced. I was convinced to go to that blind date. And I'm glad I did. Because that blind date became my wife, and we've been married for 48 years. Lucy, please stand up. That was a blind date. We've been together for 48 years, maybe another 3 before that. But she's the rock of the family. And she throws them sometimes. So I started doing research to write about our people, our athletes, our local girls and boys. Since then, I've published 200 stories in newspapers, university journals, and you know, I've been asked to do research for other authors as well. 200 articles. The last one was just published last week. I don't do it as much anymore. I'm tired. My eyes get tired. My fingers, it's arthritis. But I tell you what, the other things that I've done is that I've been part of 20 civic organizations in the past 30 years. I've sat on those boards for 20 years. I did it. And all the volunteer work began here at Pan American College. And I'll tell you that story as I move on. The very first photograph that I collected to write one of those stories was about Juan Cruz, I think it was his name. So I visited the house. This individual played with my dad in the 1930s. I knocked on the door, and the lady opened the door just about that wide. I introduced myself as the son of Tito Torres, who played with your dad, with your husband. The door opened a little bit more. So I asked the lady, "Do you have a photograph of your husband?" And she says, "Yes." A question for the audience. Where did people keep their valuables in the old days? Huh? Under the mattress. That is correct. She goes to the mattress, picks up the mattress, and gives me this photograph of her husband. It was all cracked and torn. But being what I am, I get along with people. And that's how I made it to Pan Am as well, because I got along with people. She gives me this photograph. I take it home, I told her I'll return it within an hour. And I did. So because I have this friend that's a genius with Photoshop, I brought it to her, a clean photograph that I've used in exhibits and oral presentations. and it brought a big old smile to her face. This is what I've done for people through my writing. I took that photograph from the darkness of this mattress to the public eye. And I've done it over and over and over again, 200 times. And I've also donated to these organizations that I belong to. One of my friends that's sitting on one of my tables also helped me with those donations. I set up a partnership with one of my neighbors that took school supplies to kids in Coahuila, Mexico. I had a 2-year agreement with him that I donated school supplies to the kids that lived in Coahuila, Mexico. And I have the letter here that they sent me to thank me. Those are the things that I did. I contributed to churches, to schools, out of my pocket and my friends' pockets to help the needy, to buy school supplies and to buy uniforms. This is what I've done. And I continue to do it. Let me read you one little note. And I also tend to give memorabilia away. I see a little kid, a deserving kid, I'm very selective. And I'll give him a bat, a ball, a book, a magazine. This is just one little note one kid wrote me, and I have many of these. And he writes, and I quote, "Dear Mr. Torres, thank you for the vintage 1920s baseball glove. It's one of the best gifts I've ever received. I think I'm going to do research about this glove. Signed, Dominic Chavez." I inspired him to read and to do research. And his father is here in the back because I invited him to come to listen to this. Mr. Chavez has done a lot for Little League Baseball in Brownsville for many years. And this kid, I think he was 12 years old at the time. He graduated valedictorian of his class. Let me also mention that as doing research, I spent at least 3 days a week for about 20 years. Spent 4 or 5 hours a day behind the microfilm and microfiche. I didn't do it the easy way, that you can go home and press a button and do research. I didn't do that. It was overwhelming. I did too much. But I'm glad I did it. Or the story about El Esqueda from Harlingen. In 1946, he was signed by the New York Giants after he served 2 years in World War II. After his playing days, he signed up for the Marines and fought in Korea. And after Korea, he stayed on to serve in Vietnam. He served in 3 wars, and he was also a professional baseball player. Those are the stories that I write about. That's a real hero. When his daughter read that story published in the Valley Morning Star, she said, "Renee," I said, "you forgot something." "What?" "So he also served in Vietnam." Well, I didn't know that. So I get those kind of calls and this kinds of notes. But I don't mind it. I was not, again, mentioned playing baseball here at Pan American. I was no superstar. Again, I was a consistent ball player. But I made one All-American team. One of the proudest moments of my life was when I married my wife, of course. The second one was when I received the Jefferson Award for Public Service. And this award was given to me in Washington, D.C. And when I go anywhere, I mention that I'm a Pan American College graduate. They thought I was a pilot. I want to just read a couple of names here. Henry Kissinger, John Glenn, Colin Powell, Rockefeller, Cesar Chavez, Lee Iacocca, and Bill Gates. These people received or were the recipients of the Jefferson Award for Public Service. I was one of those recipients, but not at the national level. I was a recipient of the regional level of the Award of Public Service. I guess you could say they were in the majors and I was in the minors. But my name will always be associated with the Jefferson Award for Public Service. And that's huge to me. And that's huge for the Rio Grande Valley, and that's huge for Pan American College. And since I'm a historian, I don't forget the past. I embrace the present, and I'm really elated about being part of this university today. I embrace that. But because I'm a historian, I need to talk about the history of this institution. There were two individuals, as far as I'm concerned, that should be celebrated, and that's Jim Brooks, who was the athletic director, and Ralph Shelley, who was the president back in the 60s. These individuals helped us get to the NCAA Division I level. In fact, one of them got me out of the service because I never went home to pick up my correspondence. So one day I get a letter that says, report to San Antonio, you've been taken to the Army or drafted. It wasn't no draft, it was a lottery. Thanks to Ralph Schilling, he wrote a letter and I got out of it. But the decades of the 60s, when I was here, it was a time of change for the country and for Pan American College. We lost the Kennedys, we lost Martin Luther King. They were smoking grass at Woodstock. The Beatles were down. Beulah was blowing in. And I'll tell you a story about Beulah. I was sleeping. Let me say that for later. But we landed in the moon. What about Pan American College? When I was here, Pan American College was looking westward. Not for gold, but for property. This was the beginning of the growth of Pan American College. New dorms, new libraries, a tennis center, a baseball park, engineering buildings. I saw all of this. So I come here in 1966. I took a bus ride from Brownsville, the VTC. Remember the VTC? It's still around. I paid $5, and that was expensive. I got here in 2.5 hours. We took the scenic route. We stopped at every city. I got here, I opened the door of the bus, and 2 stray dogs were in front of the door. That was my welcoming committee. I was no Mickey Mantle with Joe DiMaggio. I was Ned Douglas, this little kid that started playing baseball in the sandlots of Brownsville. So I had this letter of introduction to go to the South Texas Rehabilitation Center. This is where I was supposed to volunteer. That was my first volunteer job, and it started here at Pan American College. It sounded like a very fancy name, so I found my way. There was no GPS back then. I found my way, maybe 2 or 3 miles away, and I carried everything in my brown HEB bag. Remember those brown HEB bags, if you're old enough? They had those brown bags. I carried all my belongings in this bag. And my pockets were full of hot air. They had a penny to my name. So I get to the South Texas Rehabilitation Center. It was a house for the mentally ill. And I'm not mocking anyone, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I was supposed to eat, sleep, and also create some activities for the patients. They were not young, they were older patients. It was a very stressful semester. I was taking full-time, hours of 15, eating, sleeping, and also, playing baseball at the time. My stomach was always growling. Not because of the stress, because of the food that I was eating. It wasn't bad, but it was good, it was food. I wasn't used to eating 3 meals a day. At my house, we ate 1 meal a day. And I was used to that. It was very stressful. So what I did is I moved on a semester and a half. My first night at that place was a thriller. And I'm not going to make fun of this individual, but he was sleeping right beside me. And all of a sudden he starts howling like a coyote at night. Well, needless to say, I didn't sleep that night or for many nights after that. And I'm not making fun of him. That was part of his illness. Others could turn from a human into another behavior that was violent. Very stressful for me as an 18-year-old. So I decided, hey, I'm going to move on and look for a place by myself somewhere. And I did. I went down to Junior Street, and I found a little, Joe called it a shack, I call it a jacal. It was that bad. I went to the landlord and asked, how much do you want for rent for this place? It's not rentable. He said, what do you mean? It doesn't have running water, it doesn't have heat, it doesn't have a stove, it doesn't have a refrigerator. I said, but how much do you want for it, for me to rent this? It's just $15 a month. And I said to myself, hey, that's on my budget. I couldn't refuse $15 a month. All I needed was a shell, and that's what it was. How did I survive this? Well, I had a budget of $47 that came from my father's Social Security. I could spend $1.25 a day. There was a corner store that I went and asked for credit. Remember the old days, they give you a tarjetita, a card, and you can buy for credit. So I bought for credit. This man I gave him the sad face, of course, and I was pretty good at that. He gave me credit, and every Saturday I would pay him. I would buy a can of tuna fish and bologna. That was my dinner. My lunch sometimes came because the school had a cafeteria, and if you bought a tray, you got seconds. So I knew a lot of girls that paid their tray. But I was very good at getting along with people. Interpersonal communication skills, they call it today. I was very smart at that. The other intelligences were in the cellar. But that particular one, I was very good at. I got along with people. And as a matter of fact, 85% of the success in this life has to do with getting along with people. The research says that. I was very good at that. So that was sometimes my lunch. That was my one good meal a day. And that's how I survived. But that's the way I was when I was a kid. So I could adjust to any environment. Lack of shelter, lack of food, too hot, too cold, difficult in the classroom. I could adjust to them. You know the one thing that I could not adjust to was the curveball. Those of you that are not in baseball, I couldn't stay away from the curveball and I couldn't hit it. So that's the only thing that I could not adjust to. So consequently, it ruined my career. And many others. Who brought that curveball to the Valley? Well, two guys from Brownsville that played in Notre Dame during the turn of the century. They brought the curveball to the Valley. That ruined many careers. Now, when I was living in this shack, how did I do it to take a shower? I had no running water, no hot water. I took a kinesiology class in the morning. That way I could go take a bath at the gym. I graduated with so many kinesiology hours that they thought that was my major. And it wasn't. It was because I had to take a shower in the morning. In the afternoon, with the baseball practice, I take a shower then. To make a long story short, on the weekends, my teammates invited me to their homes. And I was a well-behaved kid because I was in somebody's house eating somebody's food. Please allow me to talk a little bit about the days playing NCAA baseball here at Pan American College. To me, it was more than just playing baseball. It was about life. You have to remember that we got a 4-year deferment back then. The government says you go 4 years to school and we won't bother you. The biggest challenge was maintaining your GPA, that darn GPA, and Vietnam. If you didn't pass your courses or maintain your GPA, Uncle Sam will be knocking on your door, like it did for one of our third basemen. He didn't make it, so he wound up in Vietnam 3 months later. So that was scary, very scary for me. Fear of failure helped me succeed. Now, this friend of mine who was a teammate of mine says, "Hey, Renee, how's your GPA?" I said, "Just like yours, pretty bad." "Well, I got a solution," he said. "Let's take some religion classes." What is that going to do to me? It's a guaranteed B or an A. So by the time I left the institution, I graduated like with 15 religion hours. 5 more hours I could be speaking to you now as a preacher. But I did what I could to pass. Because I wasn't the smartest in the world. But I was hardworking. I found a way to succeed. Charles Darwin, his theory that he says survival of the fittest, although he was speaking about genetically sense, I was speaking about the human sense. I could survive any environment, eating 1 meal a day, until I was a junior. When Coach Ensminger, who was here before Ogletree, he says, "Renee, I got you some money." "Oh, wow, where were you 2 years ago?" But he was a humanitarian. He took care of me. He was always looking to help me. He knew my struggles. So in my junior year, he says, "Hey, Renee, I got you $200 a month." I said, "Woo, I'm going to be in heaven." I survived with $47 for 2 years. 200? Oh, I'm rich. I could eat 2 meals a day then. It was always a struggle, as far as food and shelter was concerned. Let me just end this part of this baseball thing, because I know that you've been here a long time. But I have some pretty good little story here. In 1967, we made a trip to Lamar Tech. It was a rainy, misty day. And I'm in the batter's box, the circle. And I hear from the fans, "Hey, you greaser, what do you have in your back pocket? A taco?" Well, that was the first time I cried in a baseball game. I never cried as a kid. I never cried when I was an adult. I was never really emotional about losing or winning. But this time around, I cried. When Tom Hanks said, "There's no pride in baseball," he didn't ask me. This is the article that was published, and it says, "Bronx fall 3-0 before Hacklers." Now I won't read you the article because it takes time, but he didn't write but part of the story. But that was a isolated incident. It never happened again. The rest of the places that would give us the silent treatment. And sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Let me speak just a little bit about the history of this institution. I accept what we have today. It's a great university, and I'm part of it. Because I'm a historian, though, I need to tell you a little bit about the history. This institution shall never forget, or should never forget, the roots, where we came from, where this institution started. And it started in 1927, when it was called Edinburgh College. It went through several name changes: Edinburgh Regional College, Edinburgh College, Pan American College, 1954. But it was always the Bronx. This jerseys that you have here are part of that history. They're mine. And they're in my office at home. But I welcome the Vaquero. But we must not forget the history of this institution. The people from Hidalgo County were paying taxes in 1927, and they were paying taxes up to 1963. In 65, this institution becomes state-supported. And we're glad for that. Another history moment. There was an individual, an African American, in 1954, that was the first African American to play baseball here at Pan American College. And even a greater feat than that, he was the first African American to play college baseball in the state of Texas. This institution should be celebrating Joe Williams. In 1927, this institution had a football team. Believe it or not, a very successful football team. 27, 28. And guess what? I found the yearbook from 1930. It has a photograph of the football team, of the basketball team. And it was called the Midlothian yearbook. Midlothian, why? Because it was a region in Scotland that the name of Edinburgh came from. 1930, they had a football team. In 27, the biggest rival, the Scorpions from Brownsville. But they played many other teams. There's a Macaulay who was a fullback in 1930, goes on and plays at Rice Institute, becomes an All-American, and is inducted into Rice University Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, if you want to be remembered, or if you want your name to be remembered when you die, you have to do one or two things. You have to do something with writing about, or write something with reading. Ladies and gentlemen, I've done both. And Abraham Lincoln would have been very proud of me, because those were his words. And lastly, a question that was asked also by a very famous person. He asked, what have you done for other people? That was a question asked by Martin Luther King. What have you done for others? I have done my part. I ask the audience, what have you done? Thank you.
How about another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Renee Torres. All right, we have a little housekeeping that we need to take care of. Before we go any further, how about one more round of applause for all of our inductees today? You had the opportunity to hear from Dr. Guy Bailey and our athletic director and vice president, Chase Conk. But there are some other people in the room that need to get a little recognition as well. And I'll start with, I can't believe he left her off, but Lisa Kung, who is joining us today, Chase's wife. How about a round of applause for her? She's just as equally involved in this university and what she does for us, so we appreciate her. Mr. Vince Volpe, he is the Deputy Director of Athletics and our Chief Financial Officer. Thank you, sir, for being here. James Martinez, I think James might have left the room, but James was here earlier. He is our Senior Associate Athletic Director for Business Operations. Mr. Rogelio Chanez, who is a key part of the development here at UTRGV. Rogelio, give me a big round there, right there. Jonah Goldberg, our Senior Sports Information Director. Jonah, this is all because of your hard work, my friend. We appreciate you. As you came in to get your tables today, you were greeted by two lovely young ladies, Melba Cantu and Clarissa Rodriguez. They're key parts of our program. I cannot forget about Sarah Hernandez, who is right here next to us. Sarah is a former student athlete who had so much fun in her days as a Bronc that she said, I want to continue this, and she's made this her calling, and we appreciate everything that she does. So thank you, Sarah. Okay, we do have to remind you, all of our inductees will be honored at tonight's basketball game happening at the Bert Ogden Arena during the halftime of our contest. Your tickets will be at the will call window. You are asked to get with Roger in the back, and confirm the number of tickets that you will need. It is a 10,000 seat arena, so Mr. Hernandez, if you've got anybody else along the coast that you want to call and have them come in before 7, we got you. I think we can spot you on that one, so we'll get you covered on that. We want to ask all of our inductees to please come forward. We want to take photos with you, with the photos that we have here, and capture your memories one more time of today's induction. With that being said, I'm a big believer. You've got to know where you've been in order to know where you're going. And we've been in great places today. And it shows that we're going great places. I thank you for your participation. I thank you as a fan of sports. I thank you as an MC. You've been a great crowd, and we appreciate you so much. So I'm going to ask all of our inductees to please make their way forward at this time so that we can do a group photo. Make sure that we've got everybody covered there. Our inductees, please make your way forward. A group photo over here to my right, I'm told. In front of the stage. In front of the stage. Jonah, are we clear to cut the Facebook Live? Jonah says we can kill the Facebook Live. So thanks to everybody who's